The envelope was sealed, but my heart was not. I stood frozen outside Professor Sterling's office, the letter trembling in my hand, its words a confession I'd never meant for her to see. By some cruel twist of fate, I'd swapped it with my history essay, and now my soul was laid bare before the one person I could never face. It was a crisp October evening in Massachusetts, the kind where the air smells of wet leaves and regret. My name is Elena Harper, a junior at Crestwood College, and I'd always prided myself on keeping my life-tidy assignments submitted on time, emotions neatly tucked away. But love, I was learning, was a messy thing, and it had just spilled all over my carefully ordered world. The mistake happened that morning. I'd been up late juggling deadlines and daydreams. My best friend Mia had been teasing me about my crush on Sarah, a senior in my literature class with a laugh like summer and eyes that could unravel me. I'd written a letter to Sarah, pouring out everything, how her smile made my chest ache, how I dreamed of telling her the truth. It was a reckless act, meant to stay hidden in my desk drawer. But in my sleep-deprived haze, I'd stuffed it into the wrong envelope, sending it straight to Professor Lila Sterling, my history professor, along with my essay on the American Revolution. Lila Sterling was not just any professor. At 32, she was the youngest tenured faculty member at Crestwood, with a reputation for brilliance and a presence that commanded every room. Her lectures were electric, her green eyes sharp enough to cut through nonsense, yet warm enough to make you feel seen. I'd spent months in her class, trying not to stare too long, convincing myself my admiration was purely academic. But now, she'd read words I'd never meant for her, words that painted me as a lovesick fool. I stood outside her office door, the campus quiet except for the patter of rain. My pulse raced as I clutched the correct essay, hoping to swap it before she noticed. But the door creaked open, and there she was, holding my letter, her expression unreadable. "Elena," she said, her voice low like she was testing the weight of my name. "We need to talk." My stomach plummeted. I followed her inside, the air thick with the scent of old books and her faint jasmine perfume. Her office was a sanctuary of oak shelves and soft lamplight, but it felt like a courtroom now. She sat behind her desk, the letter open in front of her, its pages crinkled from her touch. "I received your assignment," she said, her fingers brushing the paper. "But this isn't about the revolution, is it?" I wanted to disappear. "It was a mistake," I stammered. "I meant to send the essay. That letter, it wasn't for you." Her brow arched, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of amusement in her eyes. "A mistake," she repeated, leaning back. "So you didn't intend for me to read about how someone's smile lights up the darkest corners of your heart?" My face burned. I'd written those words for Sarah, but hearing them in Lila's voice made them feel different, intimate, dangerous. "I'm so sorry," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "It was meant for someone else. I'll get you the real essay right now." She held up a hand, stopping me. "Elena, wait. Whoever this was meant for, it's beautiful, vulnerable, brave." Her gaze softened and my breath caught. "But I need to know, why didn't you tell this person yourself?" I froze. How could I explain that I was terrified of rejection, of exposing the part of me that loved so fiercely it hurt? That being a lesbian in a small college town still felt like walking a tightrope? I didn't have the words, not for her, not for anyone. "I'm not brave," I admitted, staring at the floor. "Not like that." Lila stood, crossing the room to stand closer, too close. "You're braver than you think," she said softly. "Writing this took courage, even if it ended up in the wrong hands." Her words hung between us, heavy with something I couldn't name. I mumbled an apology and fled, the essay still clutched in my hand, her gaze burning into my back. That night I couldn't sleep. The rain battered my dorm window, and my mind replayed Lila's voice, her eyes, the way she'd said, "brave." I told myself it was nothing, she was just being kind, professional. But the letter was still in her possession, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd opened a door I wasn't ready to walk through. The next morning I found a note slipped under my door. It was in Lila's elegant handwriting. "Meet me at the library, 7 p.m. We need to discuss your essay." My heart sank. Was she going to lecture me on professionalism? Or worse, had she figured out the letter was about Sarah and planned to play matchmaker? I spent the day distracted, avoiding Sarah's gaze in literature class, her smile a reminder of the mess I'd made. By evening, I was a bundle of nerves as I entered the library, its towering shelves casting long shadows. Lila was waiting at a corner table, her blazer draped over a chair, her hair loose for once. She looked softer, almost vulnerable. "Elena," she said, gesturing to the seat across from her. "Thank you for coming." I sat clutching my bag like a lifeline. "I brought the essay," I said quickly, sliding it across the table. "The right one." She glanced at it but didn't pick it up. Instead, she pulled out my letter, its edges worn from handling. "I read it again," she said, her voice careful. "And I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have kept it. But it moved me." My throat tightened. "It's not about you," I blurted, then winced at how harsh it sounded. "I mean, it's for someone else." "I'm not." "I don't." She smiled, a small wistful thing. "I know it's not about me. But it made me think about courage. About the things we don't say." She paused, her eyes searching mine. "I've been where you are, Elena. Afraid to speak. Afraid of what it means to love someone you're not supposed to." Her words hit like a thunderclap. Was she saying? No, she couldn't be. She was my professor, untouchable, a world apart. Yet the air between us crackled with something unspoken, something that made my heart race and my palms sweat. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice breaking. "I wrote that letter because I'm scared. I'm scared of her, of myself, of everything." Lila leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Fear means you're alive," she said. "It means you have something worth fighting for. Don't let it stop you." For a moment I forgot the letter, forgot Sarah. All I could see was Lila, her intensity pulling me in like gravity. I wanted to ask what she meant, what she was afraid of, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I nodded, my heart a tangled mess of hope and confusion. As I left the library, the rain had stopped, leaving the campus glistening under the streetlights. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something vast, something I didn't understand. The letter was still out there, a confession that had sparked something I couldn't control. And Lila Sterling, with her quiet strength and knowing eyes, was now a part of it. The days that followed were a blur of avoidance and obsession. I dodged Sarah's attempts to talk after class, her bright smile now a reminder of the letter I'd never meant to send anywhere. But it was Lila who haunted me most, her words in the library, her steady gaze, the way she'd spoken of fear and love like she knew them intimately. Crestwood's campus, with its ivy-covered buildings and cobblestone paths, felt smaller now, like every corner held a chance of running into her. I threw myself into my studies, hoping to bury the chaos in my heart under piles of textbooks. But every history lecture was a test of willpower. Lila stood at the front of the room, her voice weaving stories of revolutions and rebellions, and I couldn't stop wondering about the rebellion in her own past. What had she meant by loving someone she wasn't supposed to? On Thursday, I arrived early to her class, hoping to slip in unnoticed. But as I settled into my usual seat in the back, Lila called my name. "Elena, could you stay after class? I'd like to discuss your essay." My stomach twisted. The essay I'd given her in the library was polished, meticulously researched, nothing like the letter. What could she want? I nodded, barely meeting her eyes, and spent the next hour pretending to take notes while my mind raced. After class, the room emptied, leaving just the two of us. Lila leaned against her desk, her arms crossed, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Your essay was excellent," she said. "One of the best I've read this semester. But I'm more curious about the letter." I groaned inwardly. I thought we were done with that. Not quite. She picked up a folder, pulling out the familiar crinkled pages. "I've been thinking about what you said about being scared. I want to help you, Elena, but I need to understand. Who is this letter for?" I hesitated, my heart pounding. Telling her about Sarah felt like exposing a wound, but lying felt worse. "It's for Sarah Bennett," I said finally, my voice barely audible. "She's in my literature class. I like her. A lot." Lila's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes, relief, maybe, or disappointment. I couldn't tell. "Sarah," she repeated, nodding. "She's a bright student. Kind. You two would make a good pair." Her words should have felt encouraging, but they stung instead. I didn't want her approval, not like this. I wanted, what? I didn't even know. "I don't know how to tell her," I admitted. I wrote the letter to get it out of my system, not to actually send it. Lila tilted her head, studying me. Why not? What's holding you back? I laughed, a bitter sound. Everything. What if she doesn't feel the same? What if she laughs? Or worse, what if she's not? I trailed off, the word queer caught in my throat. Crestwood was progressive, but small-town New England wasn't always kind to people like me. Lila's gaze softened. I understand, she said quietly. More than you know. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. When I was your age, I was terrified of my own heart. I loved summoning a woman who was out of reach. A mentor. It wasn't just about her. It was about admitting who I was to myself. My breath hitched. Lila was queer? The revelation hit me like a wave, reshaping everything I thought I knew about her. What did you do? I asked, my voice trembling. I didn't tell her, she said, her eyes distant. I let fear win. And I've regretted it ever since. She looked at me, her gaze piercing. Don't make my mistake, Elena. If Sarah means this much to you, tell her. Even if it's messy. Even if it hurts. Her words were a lifeline and a blade all at once. I wanted to ask more about her. About the woman she'd loved, but the air felt too fragile, like one wrong word might shatter it. Instead, I nodded, clutching my bag as I stood. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. I'll think about it. As I left, her voice followed me. Elena? Be kind to yourself. You deserve it. That night, I sat at my desk staring at a blank page. Lila's story echoed in my mind, stirring something restless in me. I wanted to be brave like she'd said, but the thought of confessing to Sarah still felt like stepping off a cliff. Instead, I found myself writing again, not to Sarah but about Lila. About the way her words made me feel seen, understood. About the way her presence lingered like a song I couldn't stop humming. The next day, I saw Sarah at the campus coffee shop, her blonde hair catching the sunlight as she laughed with friends. My heart did its usual flip, but it felt different, less urgent. I realized I hadn't thought about her all morning, not the way I'd been thinking about Lila. The realization was a jolt. Was I confusing admiration for something else? Or was my heart playing a crueler trick, pulling me toward someone even more unattainable? I avoided Lila's office hours, too afraid of what I might say. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. On Friday, I was crossing the quad when I heard my name. I turned to see Lila, her coat flapping in the autumn wind, holding a book. You dropped this in class, she said, handing me my copy of Leaves of Grass. Thanks, I mumbled, taking it. Our fingers brushed and I swear the air sparked. Elena, she said, her voice softer now. I meant what I said. About being brave. But I also want you to know. You're not alone in this. I looked up, meeting her eyes, and for a moment the world fell away. There was something raw in her gaze. Something that made my chest ache in a way Sarah's smile never had. I wanted to ask what she meant, but my courage failed me. Instead, I nodded and hurried away, the book warm in my hands, her words burning in my heart. By the weekend, I was a mess of contradictions. I wanted to tell Sarah how I felt, to follow Lila's advice. But every time I pictured it, Lila's face crept into my mind, her steady voice, her knowing eyes. I was falling and I didn't know for who. The weekend stretched long and restless, each hour heavy with indecision. I carried Lila's words like a secret, turning them over in my mind until they felt like part of me. But the more I thought about her, the less certain I was about Sarah, and that terrified me. On Monday, I decided to act. I would tell Sarah, rip off the bandage and put an end to the chaos in my heart. I found her in the student lounge, her laughter cutting through the hum of conversation. She was sitting with Mia, my best friend, who waved me over with a grin. Elena, where have you been hiding? Sarah turned, her blue eyes bright. Hey, stranger, she said, her smile easy. You okay? You've been kinda distant. I swallowed hard, my rehearsed confession crumbling. Yeah, just busy. Can we talk? Alone. Mia raised an eyebrow but didn't argue as Sarah followed me to a quiet corner. My hands were clammy, my heart a drumbeat. So, I started, my voice shaky. There's something I need to tell you. I like you. A lot. More than a friend. Sarah's smile faltered, replaced by a look of gentle surprise. Oh, Elena, she said softly. I'm flattered. Really. But I don't feel that way. I'm straight and I'm kind of seeing someone. The words hit like a punch, but not as hard as I'd feared. I nodded, forcing a smile. Okay. I just needed to say it. Thanks for being honest. She reached out, squeezing my hand. You're amazing, Elena. Whoever you end up with is gonna be lucky. I walked away, my chest tight but lighter than I'd expected. Rejection stung, but it hadn't broken me. Maybe Lila was right, speaking the truth, even if it hurt, was its own kind of freedom. But freedom brought new questions. If my feelings for Sarah weren't as deep as I'd thought, why was Lila's face the one I saw when I closed my eyes? Why did her words, her presence, feel like a current pulling me under? I needed to see her to understand what was happening to me. I found her in her office that afternoon, grading papers. She looked up as I knocked, her expression shifting from surprise to warmth. Elena, she said, setting her pen down. I wasn't expecting you. I told Sarah. I blurted, the words spilling out. About the letter. Well, not the letter exactly, but how I felt. She doesn't feel the same. Lila's face softened, but there was something else there, relief, maybe? How do you feel now? She asked. Free, I said, surprising myself. And confused. I hesitated, then plunged forward. You said you loved someone once. Someone you couldn't have. What was it like? She leaned back, her gaze distant. It was like carrying a flame in a storm, she said. Every day I wanted to tell her, but the world, her position, my fear kept me silent. She was my professor, Elena. I was her student. My heart stopped. The parallels were too stark, too raw. Did you ever get over it? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She smiled, a sad, beautiful thing. I learned to live with it. But it shaped me. Made me braver in other ways. She paused, her eyes locking onto mine. You're braver than I was, Elena. You told Sarah. That's no small thing. Her praise warmed me, but it wasn't enough. I wanted to know more about her, about the woman she'd loved, about the ache I felt when she looked at me. But the boundary between us, student and professor, felt like a wall I couldn't climb. What if I'm not brave enough for what comes next? I asked. Lila stood, rounding her desk to stand closer. You don't have to have all the answers now, she said. Just keep listening to your heart. It'll lead you where you need to go. Her words were a lifeline, but they also deepened the ache. I wanted to tell her how she made me feel seen, understood, alive in a way I'd never been. But she was my professor, and I was her student, and the line between us felt both fragile and unbreakable. That night I wrote again, not a letter but a journal, spilling out the tangle of my feelings. I wrote about Sarah, about the relief of her rejection, about Lila's story and the way it mirrored mine. I wrote about the pull I felt toward her, forbidden and impossible, and the fear that it was all in my head. By the time I stopped, my hand ached, and the pages were full of truths I wasn't ready to face. The next day, I ran into Mia at the dining hall. She cornered me, her eyes narrowed. Okay, spill. What's going on with you? You've been weird ever since that letter thing. I sighed, poking at my salad. It's complicated. I told Sarah how I felt and she doesn't feel the same. But now, I don't know what I feel. Mia's eyebrows shot up. Wait. Is this about someone else? Oh my God, Elena, who is it? I shook my head, my cheeks burning. It's not like that. I'm just figuring things out. She leaned closer, her voice low. Is it Professor Sterling? Because I've seen the way you look at her in class. Like she hung the moon. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. That's ridiculous, I said, but my voice betrayed me. Mia grinned. Sure, whatever you say. But I'm telling you, Elena, there's something there. I've seen her look at you too. Her words sent my heart into overdrive. Was it possible? Could Lila feel something? I pushed the thought away. She was my professor. She was being kind, supportive, nothing more. But Mia's words planted a seed, one that grew with every passing hour. By Wednesday I was a wreck. I couldn't focus in Lila's class, her voice a hum that both soothed and unraveled me. After class she asked me to stay again, this time to discuss a group project. But as we talked, her hand brushed mine and the air shifted. Her eyes held mine a moment too long, and I swear I saw something, want maybe or recognition. Elena, she said softly, you seem distracted. Is everything okay? I wanted to tell her everything. that she was the reason I couldn't think straight, that her story had cracked something open in me. But I just shook my head. "I'm fine," I lied. "Just tired." She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe me. As I left, I felt her gaze on my back, heavy with unspoken words. The seed Mia planted grew into a wildfire. I couldn't stop replaying every moment with Lila's words, her glances, the brush of her hand. By Friday, I was drowning in what-ifs, each one more impossible than the last. She was my professor, a line I couldn't cross, yet my heart didn't care about rules. I decided to confront the chaos head-on. I'd ask Lila to return the letter, close that chapter, and focus on moving forward. But when I reached her office, the door was ajar, and I heard voices inside. I paused, catching my name. "Elena's work is exceptional," Lila was saying. "But that letter, it's complicated. I don't know how to handle it." Another voice, Professor Daniels, her colleague, replied, "Be careful, Lila. She's a student. You know how this could look." My heart stopped. I backed away, my pulse roaring in my ears. Was Lila in trouble because of me? Had I put her at risk by sending that stupid letter? I fled, my mind a storm of guilt and fear. That evening I sat in my dorm, staring at the journal I'd filled with my tangled thoughts. I needed to fix this, to take back the letter and make things right. But the thought of facing Lila, of seeing judgment or pity in her eyes, was unbearable. Instead, I wrote her a new letter, not a love letter, but an apology. I explained the mistake, begged her to forget the first letter, and promised to keep my distance. It was clinical, professional, everything my heart wasn't. I slipped it under her office door late that night, the campus silent except for the rustle of leaves. I told myself it was the right thing, but it felt like betrayal of myself, of her, of whatever was growing between us. The next morning I skipped her class, unable to face her. But by noon my phone buzzed with an email from Lila. "Elena, we need to talk. My office, 3 p.m. Please don't avoid this." My stomach churned, but I couldn't ignore her. Not again. Her office felt different when I arrived, smaller, more intimate. She was standing by the window, her silhouette framed against the gray autumn sky. "You didn't come to class," she said, turning to face me. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were stormy. "I'm sorry," I said, my throat tight. I heard you talking to Professor Daniels. I didn't mean to cause trouble." Her expression softened. "You heard that?" She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Elena, you're not in trouble. I am. Or I could be, if we're not careful." My heart sank. "Because of the letter?" "Because of this," she said, gesturing between us. "I've been trying to keep this professional, but I can't pretend I don't see you. Really see you." Her voice broke and my world tilted. That letter. It reminded me of things I've buried for years. Things I thought I'd moved past. I stared at her, my breath shallow. "What are you saying?" She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine. "I'm saying I feel something, Elena. Something I shouldn't. And it scares me as much as it excites me." The air was electric, every nerve in my body alive. I wanted to reach for her, to close the distance, but fear held me back. "You're my professor," I whispered, the words a plea and a protest. "I know," she said, her voice raw. "And that's why we can't. Not now. Maybe not ever. But I needed you to know." Tears stung my eyes. It was everything I wanted and everything I couldn't have. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice breaking. She smiled, a sad, beautiful thing. "We keep going. You keep being brilliant. I keep teaching. And we both try to be brave, even when it hurts." I nodded, my heart shattering and soaring all at once. As I left her office, the weight of her words settled over me. She felt something. For me. It was impossible, forbidden, but it was real. Over the next week, I threw myself into my studies, trying to outrun my feelings. Lila and I kept our distance, our interactions clipped and professional. But every glance, every accidental brush of hands, was a reminder of what we'd admitted. It was torture, but it was also alive, like nothing I'd ever felt. Mia noticed the change in me. "You're glowing and miserable at the same time," she said one night over pizza. "What's going on?" I wanted to tell her, but I couldn't. Not yet. Instead I said, "I'm figuring myself out. A lot." She hugged me, her voice soft. "You'll get there, Elena. You always do." By the end of the semester, I'd made a decision. I couldn't keep running from my heart. I wrote one final letter, not to Sarah, not to Lila, but to myself. I poured out everything, my fear, my hope, my love for a woman I couldn't have. I sealed it, tucked it away, and promised myself I'd open it in a year, when I wasn't her student anymore. On the last day of class, Lila handed back our final essays. Mine had a note. Elena, your work is extraordinary. Keep shining. Lila, I looked up, meeting her eyes across the room. For a moment it was just us, the world falling away. The semester ended, but the ache didn't. Winter break swept me back to my hometown, a small Massachusetts suburb where snow blanketed everything, muffling the world's sharp edges. I carried Lila's note in my pocket, her words a quiet flame against the cold. I spent those weeks reflecting, my journal filling with questions. What did it mean to love someone you couldn't have? Was it enough to feel it, to hold it close without acting on it? I thought of Lila's story, her unspoken love, her regrets, and vowed not to let fear define me. But I also knew I had to respect the boundaries between us, at least for now. When spring semester began, I didn't sign up for Lila's class. It was a deliberate choice, a way to give us both space. But Crestwood was small, and I saw her everywhere, crossing the quad, laughing with colleagues, her presence a magnet I couldn't resist. Each time our eyes would meet, and the air would hum with everything unsaid. One February evening I found myself at the campus coffee shop, working on a paper. The door chimed and there was Lila, her coat dusted with snow. She hesitated, then joined me, her smile tentative. Mind if I sit? I nodded, my heart racing. We talked about books, about history, about everything except us. It was safe, but it wasn't enough. As she stood to leave, I blurted, I'm not your student anymore. Her eyes widened, then softened. I know, she said quietly, but it's still complicated. I don't care, I said, my voice steady for once. I don't know what this is, but I feel it. And I think you do too. She looked at me, her expression torn between longing and restraint. Elena, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You have no idea how much I want to say yes. But I'm still faculty. There are rules, expectations. And you deserve someone who can give you everything, not just stolen moments. Her words hurt, but they were honest. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Maybe someday? I asked, hating how small I sounded. She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. Maybe, she said. Keep being you, Elena. That's more than enough. Spring turned to summer, and I threw myself into new projects, new friendships. I dated cautiously, learning to open my heart without fear. Sarah and I stayed friends, her kindness a reminder that honesty, even when it hurt, was worth it. But Lila was never far from my thoughts. By senior year I was different, stronger, surer. I saw Lila at a campus lecture, her presence still magnetic. We talked afterward, the old spark flaring but tempered by time. She was proud of me, she said, and I believed her. On graduation day I stood in my cap and gown, the future wide open. Lila found me in the crowd, her smile warm and unguarded. Congratulations, Elena, she said, handing me a small envelope. You've earned this. Inside was a note. You're braver than you know. Keep shining. Always, Lila. Tucked beside it was my original letter, the one that started it all, its edges soft from time. I looked up, meeting her eyes, and for the first time I felt peace. Not because we'd crossed the line, but because we'd both been honest, both been brave. Years later, I'd open that letter to myself, the one I'd written at the end of that semester. I'd read about the girl who was afraid to love, who learned to face her heart head-on. And I'd smile knowing that love, even unfulfilled, had taught me who I was. Lila and I never became more than professor and student, but that didn't diminish what we'd shared. It was a love letter to myself, in the end a reminder that courage is its own kind of romance, and that some stories are beautiful not because they end happily, but because they teach us to live.